Hi, everybody. It's my great honor and pleasure to introduce Sonny Vu, who's got an incredibly varied background. So we're going to chat about a number of things today, but I just wanted to introduce him really quickly and note that he's done so many different things, and his path to here has been very diverse. So he's studied Hebrew in Israel, he's studied math in Hungary, he's studied Chinese in China, and worked on linguistics with Noam Chomsky at MIT. His first startup worked on natural language and machine learning, which was then sold to a big search engine, and then worked in medical devices with Matrix, is that right? For about 10 years, and came up with a wearable glucose strip and the first blood sugar sensor for the iPhone. Since 2011, 2012, he's turned to wearables with Misfit, as you can see, kind of an elegant, very small wearable device. I guess my first question is just, how did you get from here to there? What was the path, and what made you decide to do this now?
Well, for my last company, we in a sense redesigned a product in a product category that at the time seemed pretty crowded. My last company was called Matrix. We made a blood glucose meter that worked with the iPhone. That was the last big thing that we did. And I remember when we first entered the market in 2006, there were 30. When we started the company in 2001, there were 30 competitors, and by the time we entered the market, there were 72. And so we still built out a great business, $100 million profitable. And we did that for a number of years. It did great. And then we looked at this activity tracking space, the wearable space, and we thought, surely there's something interesting to be done here. There's only about 20 competitors, it's not that many. How hard can it be? And for glucose, I think there were like 7,000 patents. And here, there's only about 2,000 patents, so it's not that big of a deal. So again, it just seemed like a more open space. It sounds kind of crazy when you put it in that perspective, but it's actually still very open. But the main impetus really is I just had a chance to have dinner with John Sculley, the former CEO of Apple and of Pepsi. And he was just a really cool guy. And one thing led to another, and I just said, hey, you want to start a company? I didn't think he'd say yes, but he did. And I said, okay, that sounds pretty cool. So we hired management to run my last company, and we moved everyone to the West Coast and, did this thing.
Wow. Very cool. Was it always the plan to do something like the Shine turned out and like Misfit turned out? Was that the plan from the beginning?
No, actually, we raised all of our venture capital financing. Altogether, I think we've raised about $25 million. And we were actually working on another product. We call it Mars. That's the internal name for it. And so we were working on Mars for the longest time. And it's pretty much done. But Shine was kind of more opportunistic. We just saw how people were really excited about this space, about fitness tracking. This is back in 2012, and we said, that doesn't seem so hard. So we wanted to try something, and we did crowdfunding with it. We did Indiegogo, our favorite crowdfunding platform, and it just went really well. I mean, we hit our goals of $100,000 within 9.5 hours. We launched the campaign at 6 a.m., and by 3:30 p.m. we had hit our goals. We said, okay, I think people want this. We intentionally did not do any seeding, no PR, nothing. Just let's see if it'll work. And it worked great. So we said, okay. So Shine has kind of stolen the limelight for Misfit. So we're gonna let it run.
Great. So what was it about the Shine in particular that made it so attractive at that point, that kind of supplanted the Mars project or really stood out as being something you had to take advantage of right now?
Well, I think it was just consumer interest and just consumer interest. I think people fell in love with the product. It was a hard product to make. Originally, we had a screen, we had a button. We were going to make it, and we definitely were not going to make it out of plastic. One thing we saw was that everybody out there had basically these black rubber bands around their wrists. And we said, okay, that's it. No more plastic. Women, they're just not going to wear plastic. Plastic and rubber, they want leather, they want metal, ceramics, gold, those are the things that are interesting and to wear. So we started with materials. Then we removed the screen. We just felt, a beautiful display of lights was more interesting. then we removed the button, and that was probably the hardest thing to remove because that made us have to use the sensor as the button.
So are you wearing one right now, actually? You can show everybody?
Yeah, I've got one on my wrist right now, and there's an image of it on the screen. It's just a little metal disc that you can wear in a number of different places. I'm sure people have heard it here. Anyone here wearing a wearable device by any chance? Okay, about 20-30% of the crowd. It's pretty unusual, actually. Usually it's like 10%, you know, but I guess we're at a tech conference in San Francisco, so what do you expect?
It's a friendly audience. Yeah. So I was going to ask about, you talked a little bit about how the product evolves. So you didn't start necessarily with the form in mind. It wasn't kind of a function follows form idea. It kind of evolved from something about what you could make successfully, or how did that happen?
Well, we started really thinking in terms of what people would want to actually wear. You know, what would people wear? You know, so that's why we thought about materials. Then we thought about shape and size and wearability and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And ultimately, and then believe it or not, we almost didn't have a sensor in it. You know, and it would just be illuminated jewelry. But then we just thought, okay, that seemed kind of lame. So let's put something in that would be, you know, useful. Yeah. And so we did finally put a sensor into it. And we shipped late. We were like 3.5 months late. But it wasn't like we were like 12 months late, you know.
Sure. Do you have data on who's wearing it and how people are wearing it? How does that, and if so, then how does that relate to kind of the rest of the wearable space? And
Sure. What we're seeing in this wearable space is there's a lot of competition for the wrists, and it's probably kind of like the most natural thing to wear, a place to wear it, because people have been wearing watches for many years, and so that's like, it's just something people do. It's a habit, and it's a socially acceptable thing to do. And that's reflected in our user base. A lot of people wear our products on the wrist, but we're also seeing quite a few people not wear it on the wrist. So for example, cyclists really love, we have a whole group of like hardcore cyclists who love Shine, and it's cyclists and swing, spin class goers. And it's because, because you can wear it not at the wrist, you can wear it at your foot and your hip. And so the problem is with other products that are worn at the wrist, you can't actually track those activities very well because your wrists don't move. Shine doesn't track it well there either. And so people will take it off and put it somewhere else, which you can do, whereas the other wrist-worn products are kind of dedicated there, so you can't actually move it to another location. And so we're seeing a kind of different use cases for different positions. The neck actually turned out to be pretty popular. Doing a necklace, that was a crowdsourced idea. We kind of asked people, hey, where else would you like to wear it? And the top thing that came back was necklace. So we made a necklace, we made a bunch of them. We made this one that we introduced recently, and people really like that.
I saw that actually. It's really interesting. It looks like there's quite a bit of accessories on your website and everything else now. Is that something you guys anticipated, or is that like a thing you kind of grew into?
You know, that was something that we kind of stumbled. We kind of anticipated, but we didn't realize it was that big of a deal. And we realized it was a big deal because of Indiegogo. You know, we were on the campaign, and like people started buying all the leather bands, and then when we did the necklace, people like we sold. You know, like people really took that up, and so. And now we're seeing a lot of partners who are interested in making accessories for Shine. So we're like, hey, this is great. You know, I think it just gives people more ways to have fun with it.
Sure. Is that something you guys planned on business model wise? I mean, were you always looking to kind of spin out accessories or make a bigger thing with that, or was the hardware always something you planned on making money on, or is it the software side, or what's the idea there?
You know, it's a good question, and I'll answer a broader question. That is. You know, does one really make much money on hardware? And the answer is no. You know, there aren't, I don't know, I don't know if there really are any like true hardware companies around, you know, because you just don't really make that much money on hardware. Accessories are kind of interesting because that helps, you know, but fundamentally most of us are software companies, you know, and that's because that's where most of the experience lies, and that's where there's just infinite ways to upgrade the experience, and that's been an important focus for us.
Okay. So looking at the software side a little bit, so one of the criticisms that I've seen leveled at Shine in some ways is that the software is in some ways almost too simplistic. I mean, people have had trouble seeing, you know, tracking daily and updating and syncing regularly kind of thing. How do you guys address that? And is that something that you feel is a problem, or is it?
Yeah, no, actually, absolutely. There's a fine line between being simple, and simplistic. Overly simplistic, I suppose. And that's something that we've worked on and we've struggled with from very early on, because many of the apps that we've seen out there they're pretty complicated. There's a lot to look at. There's a lot to do. A lot it can do. And then we see them not rated very well. The products by some of the other product companies that make products in this space. If you look on iTunes, 3-star reviews, 3.5 average reviews across thousands of reviews. And so we took the simple approach. Ours is 4.5. Sometimes for some updates, it's a 5-star average review. So I think we're doing something right, but there's a ton more to do. There's a lot of functionality that we would love to put in there. We just need to figure out a way of doing it in an elegant way that is reflective of the design language, because it's easy to put more features in.
Yeah. So you touching on this balance between keeping the design ethos and adding functions. One other kind of common criticism leveled at the wearable space in general is that they're very aggressive almost, sometimes they're literally in your face, right? And I'm thinking of the whole glass hole effect and things like that. Shine is a little different, it seems like, in that it's more subtle in some ways. Is that something you guys thought of to diffuse that, or is this a side effect?
So the space that we're all in really is the Internet of Things. Not a very consumer-friendly term, but we all know what that's about. And the way we view that space is it's stuff in your home, car, office, on your body, and if it's on your body, then it's called a wearable product. Sure. And and I think most of the products are not very subtle right now in this space. In all 4 of those spaces, they're not very subtle. I guess in the car, there isn't a whole lot in the smart car yet, and it's easier to be subtle there because you're busy driving, you're not looking at stuff, But in the home and on the body, not gorgeous products yet, not a whole lot of them yet. And I think they're going to be headed towards either, as I've been saying, to be really wearable, you either have to be beautiful or invisible. There really isn't much space in between, and I think the same goes with the smart home. We tried to we figured, well, being invisible is pretty hard for now. Let's go with beautiful, and so that's kind of where we went. And that's why we started with the design first, the looks and wearability first, because we figured, there's nothing more useless than a really accurate sensor that you don't wear, because the accuracy on that is 0. So let's get people wearing it first. And your point touches on what we see online. If you look at the average reviews on Amazon or wherever, they're not amazing. Average review for many of these products are 3 stars, 3.5. Like, when was the last time you bought a product that was under 4 stars?
Absolutely. Is that part of a plan to gain a broader appeal, like outside of the traditional tech industry or tech consumers, so to speak? You look at these different reviews, and I think a lot of the times some of the negative reviews come from people who have higher expectations or aren't necessarily used to wearing wearables or haven't been kind of getting used to that for a long time. Have you been successful in reaching a broader audience? Do you reach different people from Fuel and Fitbit and everything else?
Yeah, if you're making Bluetooth speakers or I don't know, light bulbs or something like that, it's easy to get 4.5, 5-star reviews on Amazon. But wearables is tough. It's a really hard product category to make stuff for. It's easy to make stuff for, but it's hard to execute really well and to earn your stripes there. And that's why the average review of many of these products are like 3 stars. But I think hopefully that will change as us wearable companies get better at it and are able to refine these products more and more, and also as consumer expectations are calibrated in a sense, because there's a lot of hopes and promises that are made around these products, and they buy them and they're like, oh, it's actually very basic. I think that's part of the problem, is that many of these products don't really deliver really compelling use cases. We talk about the turnaround test a lot. That's if you were halfway to work and you forgot stuff, what would you turn around for? iPhone, wallet, keys, right? And if you think about it, activity tracking, not that compelling right now. You know, if you forgot your activity tracker at home, I don't think anyone would turn around for it. You know, not like in the same way they would turn around for their iPhone.
Yeah.
So I think we're still getting there.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I think this idea of like essential devices is really quite key to the future of wearables potentially. What do you see Misfit as a company doing to kind of address that, or how do you see that changing to become an essential device, something that people would turn around for?
Well, I think there's two things that one can do, not just us, but you know anyone in this space. One is we either replace one of those things that are really essential. You replace the iPhone, good luck. Your keys or your wallet, okay? You either replace them, you either add onto that list, meaning you find something else that is so incredibly compelling that you're like, okay, you know what? And you can apply this right now. Just think about it. You wouldn't turn around for your activity tracker. What if your activity tracker had heart rate monitoring? Would you turn around for it? No, of course not. How about if it had alerts and notification and was a smartwatch? No, you wouldn't turn around for that for either, right? Because your phone can take care of it, right? So meaning we're very early. None of these are that compelling yet. And in fact, none of the things that are coming out, even in the next season, are that compelling yet. So it's a kind of a hard battle. It's a hard hill to climb, all right? The other way is to be so wearable that you don't have to pass the turnaround test because it's on your body all the time. You know, that's the other way of, I guess, skinning the cat, right? So, you know, I don't know. So I guess we're trying to go around the mountain for now.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Just to follow up on kind of the future of it and maybe put a potential trend out there or competitor, I guess. It looks like you have very close ties to Apple and you respect them a lot. And everything from the name to being involved with John Scully to having worked with them with the Agamatrix. But there's long been rumors that Apple was looking to come out with some form of wearable device. And of all the companies that are able to do something and make it beautiful and essential, it seems like Apple would be would be one of the companies that would be a threat to do that. How do you guys look at that, and what do you think about that kind of possibility?
Great question. So I think there's some analogies with like the MP3 space, the GPS trackers. I mean, when was the last time you bought an MP3 player, right? Never, unless it was the iPod. GPS, well, I guess people still buy dedicated units, but they're like at Costco now. Instead of $400, they're $50. Okay, so that space got conflated, but maybe not as much. I think the same thing's going to happen with the activity tracking space. There will be some conflation that'll happen. A little bit by the apps, but activity tracking apps, standalone apps, really don't have that high of an engagement rate right now. Smartwatches with activity tracking apps, you bet that's going to be high engagement. Like, why would you buy an activity tracker if you had a smartwatch that ran an activity tracking app? And so for us, we would love to be in all of the smartwatches in the form of a virtual shine. And that way, if you bought a Pebble or a MetaWatch or a Moto 360, or I think it's going to be called the iPod Watch. I don't think they're going to, just because everyone's been calling it the iWatch, I don't think they're going to call it the iWatch, Everyone thought it was the iSlate for the longest time, remember? Then it became the iPad. So my guess, iPod Watch. And
heard it here first.
Well, we'll see. And then, if we could be on that, awesome. So I see that as a great place to actually increase our user base, in fact, and get even more data. And so we're actually really excited about that, and we embrace it. And I think there's going to be more and more developers embracing wearable apps. There's going to be wearable app stores. There already is with Pebble. And there's going to be more coming. 2015, you bet there's going to be an explosion of wearable apps. And wearable UX designers is going to be a job description that we see. You have mobile designers, and you've got app designers.
Yeah, so any UX people out there can start working on that. To come back to the wrist issue a little bit, so you think about the iPod Watch, or the iWatch, or whatever it is, or the Pebble being something that'll grow in capability. But earlier on we talked about how the Shine was something that was often worn around the neck or on the lapel or something different like that. do you see that being something that will kind of spread throughout wearables? Will they be more distributed around the body, or is it going to be more this working together like you just mentioned in terms of a virtual shine?
That's a good question. I think there'll be a little bit of both. Sorry for the cop-out answer. But I think there will be a lot of smartwatches and wrist-worn stuff. I think iPod Watch, Moto 360, well, maybe, I don't know about Moto 360, whatever the Android Wear watch is going to be, LG watch, the Gear 4. Yeah, I think that will clean out the space a little bit because there'll basically be 4 or 5 intelligent devices that people would choose from to wear at their wrists, each with a bunch of customization options, and maybe that'll be it. And then the rest of the body will be, I think, open for discussion. But I think that's one. There'll be underwear, there'll be socks and shoes and necklaces and earrings. But I do see this little space of jewelry tech emerging. I've been running into a couple dozen jewelry tech companies making all sorts of, like cuff and covert designs, and these guys doing a real jewelry push into this space and making products that are useful there, connected products there.
Sure. Great. So, kind of last question I think we have time for, or how long do you think it's going to take until we see that? Until we see, like you said, wearable socks, wearable underwear, kind of wearable woven fabric potentially, working with your wearable jewelry, working with your iWatch, working with your smartphone. Is this something you see as happening quite quickly, or is it going to take a little longer to get over the hump?
So much of this stuff is already out there and has been available for the last 10, 15 years. So wearable electronics embedded in soft goods, in textiles, have been around for about 15 years. They're kind of getting a resurgence, mainly for the same reason why wearables are getting kind of a resurgence, because those have been around for a while too. And it's because of mobile internet, and it's because of BLE, and how easy it is to build software experiences around those products. I do actually think that wearable, like electronic soft goods, T-shirts and whatnot, are a bit further away from mainstream than people think. I think it's very easy to announce. It's always easier to announce a product than to ship one, right? And so we see a lot of these announcements. I think we're going to see some shipments of these products. But I think we're further away from mainstream mainly because of cost, and because of the fact that if I were to wear embedded electronics, that means I'd have to replace all of my clothes with it, and that's just not going to happen. So I think it's going to take longer than people think, and just because there are some companies selling it doesn't mean it's mainstream. Jewelry tech, I think, while it's even earlier than connected soft goods, I think it's actually easier to do. Because it's little things that you wear, and the question is, the main challenges are around power, whether people are going to be okay with charging their jewelry, and whether they're going to pay a premium for this stuff. It's expensive to make these things. So we'll see. Stay tuned for over the next few years.
Awesome, cool. Thank you so much. That was really, really interesting.